I'm JP. I'm 30 years old. I'm a sous chef at Musao. Uh, I've been in the industry for almost 15 years, maybe 14. Moving from the Philippines to Texas was such a weird culture shock that one, I like didn't really know how to interact with people. I didn't know how to be around the other kids. Um, I remember I was outside the cul-de-sac. We were in a cul-de-sac, and this our neighbor, she's riding her bike, and it's pretty messed up. But she was riding her bike. She goes off a curb, and her front wheel comes off. And I'm outside watching this whole thing happen, and I was like, "Oh snap, bro!" And I didn't know what to do, so I just went back into the house and just like looked out the window to see what's happening. And she's like there on the ground crying, and I was like, I don't even know how to talk to you. But yeah, everything was so weird. Like we went to Spaghetti Factory. I think the first night I was super jet lagged, and I ordered spaghetti, and it was not the spaghetti that I knew growing up. Like it was sour, like very tomatoey, and it was a different, like, so foreign to me. My mom would just be like, "Hey, this is gonna be a new beginning. Like, it's gonna be good for you and your brother's education. You know, it's for the future." And back then in the Philippines, I hated going to school because one, they're abusive as hell, and I was kind of a knucklehead back then. Anyways, I would skip school, like stay home, complain about my back hurting and stuff like that. When I was a kid, I was a picky eater. I didn't really like to eat, or it was hard to feed me, I should say. And then my auntie baby, she took me aside and gave me a bowl of pinakbet and rice, and she kind of like talked about how these things are made, and like how I needed to be more nutritious so I can grow up healthy, and then I started eating it, and then started to notice like, wow, this is actually like really, really good. The squash is like creamy and savory and slightly sweet, and then you got the bagoong in there, and then the pork bits and all the other vegetables, and then the steamed rice. And then from then on, I kind of started to really appreciate food, and finally I started to try other things and started to kind of like create what I like in my head, and boom, started eating a lot more, and I started gaining weight. I was in 5th grade. I had to like just really learn how to be American, I guess. Find my identity in that. I was making friends. Like I had no problem making friends, but it was just more like interacting with everybody else, like adults and the other white kids, you know, like definitely there were some bullies that tried to make fun of me and stuff like that. I remember I pronounced the word, or the, Robitussin. And I remember everyone started laughing at me. I was like, what? And then that kind of like shook me. I was like, okay, there's a different type of people that they really accept, and that's when I started to really assimilate. Like watching cartoons, Nickelodeon, all that stuff, and trying to figure out what the culture was like and how I could fit in, and what are the things that I needed to like work on, like my pronunciation and how I wear my clothes, stuff like that. High school, I was in Shore, so we moved to Shoreline after Auburn, which is a drastic move too. But I believe it was for the better. I went to Shore High School. They had a really great culinary program there. And first it started out with cuisines and cultures, which was a 1-period class. And then I come to find out that there's a more advanced culinary class that took two periods out of your day. So I was super stoked. Jumped in as soon as I learned of the opportunity, spoke to Mrs. Dillard, and I was like, hey, I want to be in this class. Like, I want to learn how to cook, something I want to maybe look into professionally. And then obviously the influence of Food Network was huge. And yeah, and then I started like having friends over, cooking for them after school, showing them my favorite corned beef and rice, you know. Even from a younger age, I knew I didn't want to be part of the military just because my dad was part of that. And, I didn't want to follow in that kind of professional realm. So I wanted something more creative and something that I can use my hands and like work, you know. So during our during the Shorewood culinary class, we would have chefs from around town come in, make a menu for us, and then the kids would prep it throughout the week, and then at the end of the week, we'd have like a dinner for whoever wanted to buy tickets, kind of like a pop-up almost. And yeah, we would make these beautiful dishes, follow these awesome recipes, and really get a glimpse of what it was like to work in a professional kitchen. I mean, there was 20, 30 of us, but you know, it was really cool. And I remember on one of the few first chef dinners, I was standing in the kitchen just kind of like looking at everyone working and hearing the noises, seeing the fire from the stove come up. I remember thinking, I was like, wow, this is something I definitely want to pursue, and I can see myself doing this professionally, you know. I went to Seattle Central, took their culinary class, but then I ended up dropping out because I didn't really get support from my family. I had to like really do it on my own, which was fine. I get it. I was kind of like rebelling. They didn't really want to have me pursue something in the arts. But after that hurdle, I started working. My first job was Emerald City Smoothies. Very culinary, right? So it's prestigious. I worked there for about a month, I think. And then I got a shot at working at a sushi restaurant. So I worked at Genki for a little bit. And that was probably the most like the hardest wake-up call for me. Because then I'm actually stepping into the professional realm. Like, people do this, have been doing this for a long time, and they have their egos, they have their personalities, and I was just a young kid, like, eager, yeah, but not very skilled. So I ended up getting fired from that job. They didn't even actually fire me. They just didn't call me back. I still have my uniform, my little name tag. All I got to do was make rolls, which was fun. I really did enjoy it. I was just super slow, a little messy, you know, trying to figure it out. But I had a good time. But when I saw the schedule and my name wasn't there, and I was like, "Hey, chef, like, what's up? Like, what am I gonna come in next?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll call you." And weeks pass, and I'm like wondering what's going on. And then I called them, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't need you anymore." And I was like, that wrecked me. I didn't work for another like 2-3 months after that. But after Genki, I got to open up Skillet Diner out in South Center. And that was also super cool. I came in for an interview, and they were still like building out the space. I got to meet the chef and the owners. So that was pretty cool. Oh no, I didn't start at Skillet after Genki. I started working at Olivar, which is this old Spanish restaurant down on Cap Hill. Which is no longer there, but yeah, I really loved working there. I would even say that was kind of like a reinforcing like time for me. I got to work with Chef Philippe, and he was a very cool dude to work for. It was a scratch kitchen. We made everything from scratch. We made puff pastry. We made desserts from scratch. We made sausages from scratch. And I fell in love with the Spanish food. Like the similarities as well with Filipino food and Spanish cuisine. Yeah, my time there was very precious. I actually really missed working there. After Olivar, I worked at Skillet. There we go. And then after Skillet, I worked. I think I started working at Tro. No, I worked at a food truck. So I was out. I was slanging fish and chips out of the Nosh food truck, and I stayed there for almost 3 years. Yeah, spent 3 summers, and that was super brutal, but it was a good experience to see that side of the industry, right? Really like tough neck, kind of like you needed to really just show up and show out day in day out, and you know, it was a hard time, but it was lots to learn. It kind of like gave me thicker skin, and you know, it really forced you to learn how to work hard. And yeah, there's some things to learn out of that. I feel like. From Nosh, I worked at Trove with Rachel Yang, and I fell in love with Korean food. We were working with a lot of woks. We worked a lot with meats that we break down. And that's kind of like a more traditional like restaurant setting, right? You have your chef, your sous chef, your line cooks, and yeah, that was a precious time for me as well. I learned a lot, got better at my techniques, my knife skills, learning how to kind of like manage my time better. And yeah, after Trove, I worked at Dahlia. I spent 2 years at Dahlia. I just did lunch, like the morning shift, and it was really cool to see that kind of like big production type. And I learned a lot, but it wasn't really my type of pace. I wasn't really in love with the food. I mean, we had a lot of great produce coming from Prosser, Washington, which is their farm. But I felt like I didn't really have space for me there, if you know what I mean. Like, I was working with a lot of like loud, white, big chefs, and I felt like I didn't really get the opportunity that I was looking for. So 2 years passed. I hear that Melissa's opening a restaurant and it's going to be Filipino, and I was like, oh, sick. That's what I want to do. So luckily I met Melissa a while ago, and we became friends, and I came to help her out one day at Musang to help break down walls and like, I don't know, want to clean up, whatever. And I remember we were sitting at the stoop, and she goes, hey, you want to work for me? I was like, yes, 100% yes. And then I started calling out at Dahlia and to work and build out the kitchen over there. I think during my time in Olivar, like seeing how similar Filipino food is to Spanish food, and I was like, there's something here, like. And then obviously we would go to Beacon Hill to Lucky Seafood and buy seafood, and then we'd stop by Inay's, and what was the other one? Cocina Filipina. And I was like, well, so there's Filipino spots out here. Like, there's something carinderia style, like, you know. I was like, that's dope. In my time in Olivar, Herbal reached out to me, and we formed Lahi, and started doing Filipino food pop-ups, and I was like, this is sick, you know, like, finally, like, I like became really proud of my background, and I was like, hell yeah, you know, like, I'm Filipino, this is the kind of food that we do. And then started doing those pop-ups, and always in the back of my mind, I knew that I have to be part of a restaurant that does Filipino food. Like, I need that to be under my belt. Why are there restaurants that are in higher regards doing Filipino food. So that kind of like lit a fire under our asses, right? Like we're like, hey, like we gotta do something about this, you know? We got Chinese food up there, French food up there, Thai food even, you know? Where are the Filipino restaurants at, you know? So we took it upon ourselves to be like, hey, we gotta be ambassadors, like we gotta be the ones to kind of like run this and let the public know like the beauty of what Filipino food is. But to be honest, I mean, growing up, right, when I still kind of was like young in the mind, I also thought it should be that. And then you kind of need to break out of that because you're not allowing yourself to grow in terms of like, I don't know. Oh, let's put it this way. People eat with their eyes, right? Like, if you see something that looks appetizing, it's usually very beautifully plated and or whatever. I mean, there are those dishes that once you even just get a whiff of it, you already know what it is, and you already know like I'm gonna devour this. But for the most part, people need to see how delicious it is, I guess. So I think something clicked in me where like, hey, there's a time and a place for those cheap and accessible food, sure, and they're still very nutritious and all that. But in terms of kind of like wanting to show off and like wanting to be like, hey, Filipino food is great. It's not just stuff over rice, right? Like it's not just this or that or whatever that people defined it in the past. It's more than that. You dive into the stories behind these foods. You dive into the techniques that they use, and you know, you kind of like learn more of like to appreciate like the beauty in that. And as a chef, what we would do is we would be like, hey, let's use different proteins, let's use different veggies. You know, like there's not a lot of accessibilities to Philippine ingredients out here. So we would use ingredients that grew in our backyard, but use Filipino techniques like adobo or like sinigang, sisig even, you know?